I now recognize Mr. Higgins, the chairman of the Order Subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank our panelists for being here today. I'm honored and humbled to be a brother of the Thin Blue Line. Long ago, as a younger man, I served in the United States Army as a military police officer, and then later in life as a civilian police officer in my home state of Louisiana for many years. I maintained my post-certification through the Louisiana State Attorney General's office. So I'm a cop as I sit in front of you today. This is a week in Washington, D.C., this bizarre realm of Washington, D.C., where there's a great cacophony of support across the political spectrums for law enforcement. That you'll hear, political testimony and agenda-driven questions like how to trick panelists into supporting red flag laws, where in the limited time available, you just don't have the time or the venue here to go into it as to why we oppose such things. And the actual existence of, Mr. Swazi has left the room, but in the state of Louisiana, we have the authority, law enforcement takes guns out of houses all the time under protective order, under investigation of an ongoing criminal allegation. That property receipt is turned over to the spouse or whatever. Sometimes at the request of the spouse, you remove firearms from a residence. These laws and protections already exist. The problem is when you force them from the federal government into the sovereign states and municipalities. This is where you have major issues and infringement of Second Amendment rights. So, moving on, Mr. Bollock, you're from Austin, Texas, correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
And I would like for you to speak, if you don't mind, regarding the impact of the border crisis. You're a couple hundred miles from the border there, and we know, of course, that the invasion at the southern border, the disintegration of our sovereignty at the southern border has affected the entire country. But would you speak to the impact in your community that the border crisis has had in your city, your police department?
It's had an impact not just from a resource aspect. Our population continues to grow through a variety of different circumstances, but we've relied upon the state to help us, and the state's resources have had to be diverted to the southern border. We also have issues when it comes to identifying individuals, when it comes to following up, when people report crimes or when people commit crimes.
What about response to complaints, 911 calls, response times?
They continue to go up. We've struggled with that for several years now.
So your citizenry that's accustomed to having access to police assistance for things like domestic disturbances, break-ins, burglaries, etc., suspicious people on their property, things of that nature, are they having to wait because your officers and your deputies in your community are doing other stuff?
Either wait or not get a response at all. There are numerous instances where we quit responding.
Unfortunately, this is happening across the country. Sheriff Chapman, would you, in my remaining 30 seconds, sir, would you touch on the impact of the cartel pipelines, human trafficking, and drug trafficking into your community?
I would say that, as I mentioned before, the biggest problem that we've seen there is the fentanyl problem, which is impacting us, starting to impact our community at younger ages, and I think that's the biggest aspect that's represented by the open borders there with an increase in that. So we are starting to see that. I think our crime rate's starting to tick up a little bit. We're still doing pretty good in our particular area, but it does concern me, the open borders and the impact it's having across the country certainly is more significant, but in our community, we're still doing pretty well.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired.
Gentlemen yield.